Semiconductors have completely changed the world, and the advances in this technology continue to shape our future. However, without passive components like resistors, capacitors, and inductors, our advanced chip technology is dead in the water. These tiny components are the unsung heroes of our circuit designs, but innovation in their space is often overlooked by engineers until scarcity raises its head. Are there new innovations in passives that we should be aware of as engineers? And what is on the horizon for this key technology should another industry supercycle arrive? Passives are probably one of the first things that we as electrical engineers learn about, and I think because of that, maybe it becomes a little bit passé and we think that we know everything there is to know about passive components. But the reality is, no matter how complex or simple our design is, resistors, capacitors, inductors, they're critical parts to what make our technology work and make even our most sophisticated integrated circuits capable of doing the magic that they do. The reality is that passives really become a story when we go through any kind of a market cycle and any super cycle, and they can often become an issue when their availability or lack thereof become a real problem for our production. So how do we as engineers take a look at passives, really consider what passives we should be designing into our designs, and ensure that they're going to be resilient through any kind of availability issues that might crop up in the market? Today I have the privilege of speaking to a good friend of mine, Corporate Vice President of Future's Passives organization, Jacques, who's an expert in the area of passives, and particularly an expert in the area of where passives, how they react to different market cycles. And thank you so much, Jacques, for joining me on The Current today.
Hi, Todd. Thank you very much for having me. It's a real pleasure to spend the next little while with you and talk a little bit about my passion, and that's passives.
I love it. And there's no doubt, knowing you for all the years that I have, this is an area of passion for you and truly an area of expertise. And like I said, I think it's one that we as electrical engineers overlook way too much, where there's really a lot of moving pieces when we're talking about that. So, just kind of, when we think about passives, it is a bit of a commoditized area. There's no doubt about that. But that doesn't mean there's not innovation going on in the passive space. So what are some of the most significant trends that you've seen over the last couple of years in passives that we should be aware of?
That's a great question, Todd. And, I think the biggest misperception about passive is that it's automatically associated with, low ASP products, anything that's, a fraction of a penny. The reality is, yes, some of that is true. The more commoditized products like chip resistors and low capacitance MLCCs, those are truly a fraction of a penny type of products. Right. But the other side of it is you do have other technologies like power inductors, like transformers. Some of them are custom transformers, specialty capacitors. High rel type of resistors and capacitors, which can go for much higher ASPs than those of the the commodity stuff. Like ASPs that are for some of you would be very surprised. Like you're talking about anything between 25 cents to even $25 each. So. Right. And also when you look at the evolution of technology over the last 5 to 10 years. Especially the last 5 years with electrification, as well as most recently AI, for example, as well as the significant growth in content for passive components across all applications. We've seen a huge shift in demand for higher power, higher capacitance, higher voltages, and so on and so forth. So we've seen also emergence of newer technologies like tantalum polymers that's taken off like wildfire. Yeah. Hybrid capacitors, RF capacitors, of course power inductors as well to meet those higher specification needs of a lot of our customers. So, in fact, if you look at some of our major passive suppliers today on our line card, a lot of them are actually reporting sales, in excess of 40% coming from specialty and custom passive components, and to all the engineers listening out there, I would say the majority of those specialty type of passive products are design registrable as well.
Yeah, right. No, absolutely. And, I think it's interesting. We spend a lot of time as engineers, and when I'm supporting engineers at our customers and working with them on their designs, we'll spend, a ton of time trying to make sure we get the best possible price for the microcontroller and the microprocessor. And that's absolutely critically important. But then, when we look at the entirety of the design and all of the resistors and all the capacitors that are on the BOM, to your point, yeah, maybe they are only half of a cent, but when there are hundreds and sometimes thousands of them on a board, that starts to add up. And so I think, continued improved efficiencies in the market are going to be very, very helpful in hopefully bringing overall costs down. And we want to make sure that that availability is there so that, our customers can control the price of their final product. That's absolutely critical. And so in regards to that, what are some of the things that really, are the key drivers for the fluctuation of pricing and availability when we're talking about passives?
Yeah, so another great question, Todd. The usual suspects, right? When it comes to, what affects pricing and availability. When it comes to pricing, I would say cost of raw materials, labor costs has skyrocketed over the last, since the pandemic. Obviously production or manufacturing efficiencies, very important as well when it comes to making huge volume of passive components. I mean, we're talking about trillions and trillions of units of passive components, and the more you manufacture, the more you become more cost efficient. Cost of logistics, transportation costs has gone up significantly also, and of course now we have the constant threat of tariffs, right? So and that's hopefully we'll find a solution there soon, but the threat's still there, and it could widen and have major impact on pricing. While we have seen a relatively stable pricing environment when it comes to passive components in the 2021-2023 cycle, unlike when you look at semiconductors, there's been some ridiculous price increases there. One thing that I'll be cautious about is we could start seeing pricing for passive components start nudging up, gradually, as the demand for passive components starts recovering. Many passive suppliers have absorbed all those cost increases, during the last 2 years of market correction.
Right. And so, I think as we've had the market correction that's happened over the last couple of years. I think the balance of the decade, it shows some real signs of life and some, I think excellent potential for significant market growth with some of these technologies that maybe have taken a little bit of a slowdown in the 2024 timeframe, really picking up things like EV, things like industry and Industry 5.0 coming online, things additional, expansion of, I hate the term, but the Internet of Things and things like that. And then certainly the continued expansion of the need for, server farms for things like artificial intelligence and large language models. That seems to really be driving a lot of it. And when we think of the NVIDIA chipset and we think of those very, very sophisticated processors, the amount of capacitors that have to go around that in order for that device to work really is significant. Are we seeing that impact the market today? And is there potential that, right now that the large language model server farms are really driving a big part of the technology market right now? If EV were to come online and industrial and consumer come online a little bit stronger, what's that going to do?
Well, you know what? There's no question that you talk about AI and what the amount of component that goes around those servers. It's mind-boggling. And I can tell you for a fact that I know of one of those AI servers that are using 247 unique tantalum polymers. Right, 247, and I mean those tantalum polymers don't go for a fraction of a penny. You're talking about 30, 40, 50 cents each. So, it's and that's just tantalum polymers. You can just imagine how many MLCCs and how many chip resistors. One stat that I got from a major supplier for AI servers on the passive side is, basically just told me that they use 8 times more passive component than your typical server. So the amount of pressure that puts on factories. And AI is not going to go away. I mean, that's going to continue. The demand will remain strong for many years to come. And we're already seeing some of those passive technologies, either already on extended lead time, like tantalum polymers, aluminum polymers, You got certain types of high voltage, high capacitance MLCCs that are already experiencing 26 plus week lead time. And then there's some values in titanium polymers and aluminum polymers that's already on allocation.
Right.
So we can't be complacent, and like you said, we've seen the cycle, the super cycles in 2000, 2018, and obviously 2020, 2021. The next one there's a big likelihood that the next one would be on passive components.
Yeah, no, I certainly see that. I believe that as well. I mean, and I don't want to throw you a curveball, but maybe a follow-up question to that is, are we seeing our passive component suppliers invest in additional capacity? Is there investment there that's going to, help to maybe mitigate some of the, of what could potentially be a problem if another super cycle occurs?
Well, I mean, that's a great question. I think as far as investment is concerned, I think a lot of the suppliers are being very prudent in terms of how much more capacity they want to add on, right? Because they want to make sure that there's a sustainable growth across all market segments. Obviously, right now we're seeing a slowdown in automotive. EV was hot, and then now it's kind of like subsided a little bit. I mean, there's some targeted capacity investment to expand capacity, but again, I think it's going to take a lot of convincing for a lot of those suppliers to actually go and significantly add additional capacity. So they're going to be very, very careful moving forward. There has been some, but again, it's going to take some time. So that's why a lot of the customers needs to stop being complacent and make sure that they work with us in terms of getting on our supply chain program to ensure security of supply.
Yeah. I mean, I think communication is key, right? I think what you've just said, there's not a huge addition of a bunch of more manufacturing sites in the passive space. That means, we probably will see allocation issues and lead time stretch and maybe also pricing problems with that. I think the more we can communicate and understand what the needs of anybody that's going to be taking a product into manufacturing, we can pipeline that product. And I think that's absolutely key for any engineer to realize that you should be having conversations, whether you're doing business with Future or any other distributor or any other supplier out there. That conversation you're having with whoever you're getting your passive components from is key, and it can't be 3 months before you need to build. It needs to be as long before you need to build as possible, so that pipeline of product is going to be there. I think is absolutely key. So as we talk about some of the technologies we've talked about, servers and AI, ML, and EV. I think the other area that's a big area of growth for passives and where passives become very important, maybe even from a technology standpoint, is on high frequency products. And so things like when we're talking about cellular networks, when we're talking about again, I think a lot of the high frequency chipsets that are in processors, things like that, radar systems for automotive, all of those types of things require passives that can handle a lot more frequency than what's really been required in the past. Are you seeing suppliers find new ways to address that in the market?
Oh, absolutely. I think there's been definitely a lot of focus when it comes to trying to, meet the needs of those, different switching speeds and so on and so forth. And in my world of passives, the one criteria that is extremely, extremely critical is ESR rating, so equivalent series resistance rating, again, depending on capacity and the voltage requirement coming from each customer, in order to determine, what the best, capacity technology, whether it's, a capacitor or resistor that would be most suitable to this application, the rule of thumb really when it comes to this is, if you're going with, ultra low ESR, so you're looking at anything that's like 40 milliohms and lower, you want to get with either a ceramic capacitor or a titanium polymer or an aluminum polymer. That's where you're going to be able to achieve the lowest ESR rating with the highest capacitance. So there's definitely a lot of focus there, and we see suppliers like Vishay, Panasonic, Kyocera, AVX, the Muratas of the world and the Semcos and the Taiyudens of the world that are actually really, doing everything to actually capture a significant portion of that market where they will be able to meet those requirements, if you want.
Right, right. No, that makes sense. I mean, improvements on ESR are the holy grail for most passive components, and they're a big part of making sure we're more efficient in the circuits that we design, and that's a big play for any of these things that we're talking about, whether they're talking about powering a server farm or EV or battery recharge. So critical to the design. So I think looking at these new technologies and new materials that are being used to create our capacitors, particularly, is something that we as engineers have got to continue to really evolve with, learn more about, and make sure that we're at top of the advances that are going on there from key suppliers. How can engineers really go about mitigating risk associated with supply chain disruptions in sourcing passive components going forward? What are some of the things? If this market really does turn around and we see another super cycle like we had in 22 and 23, what can engineers be doing today to mitigate their company from those risks?
So I have great news for you, Todd, and all the engineers listening. Okay, the beauty of passive is that you got choice. You got choice all around, right? And that's the great thing about passives, right? And I'm so proud to say to everyone listening is that Future Electronics, we have one of the strongest line card in the industry when it comes to passives, right? Yeah. You name it, we got it, right? I mean, these are industry leaders that we represent, and we're not afraid to stock a lot, a lot of their products, right? So, that's traditionally what Future has been doing. We're going to continue doing that. The market intelligence, the product knowledge that we have, we'll make sure that we keep investing in the right inventory so that we can provide that security of supply to all our customers. That being said, from an engineering viewpoint, I would say that it's always very prudent to, like I said before, we have so many choices right from the get-go when you're working with on the design with our customers, is to qualify as many suppliers as possible on the AVL, right? So, right. But the one thing that we have to bear in mind that the selection process, the supply selection process, is so important, but at the same time, we got to make sure that we're aligning ourselves with the right suppliers as well. Suppliers that are, we talked about it, have no hesitation to actually make the capacity investment, that they are industry leaders. They also the leading technology, providers in the industry, and so on and so forth. That's super important because the last thing you need is to design in a supplier that has very limited capacity or don't even own their fab. So we're here to help you with that and guide you and making sure that we align the right technology with the right manufacturer so that at the end of the day, our customers are the ones that's going to win because they have aligned themselves with the right supplier right from the get-go.
Right. And your expertise and your team's expertise are absolutely critical in that. And the other service that from an engineering perspective, we're happy to offer to our customers is really doing that AVL expansion. And so, if you've got a 10K resistor and you want to find out what are the other 10 options I could have for that, we've got teams of engineers in Gdańsk, Poland and Bangalore, India, where we can take, entire bombs and go through and do that AVL expansion exercise for customer engineers and do some of the heavy lifting for you if that's of benefit. We'd love to hear from anybody to do that. And then certainly, our FAEs, our marketing organization led by Jacques, we'd love to make introductions to have those conversations to help you in your designs be able to select the right components, the right suppliers, where the suppliers that are going to support you through production from day one. So you don't have any hiccups or any headaches should another market cycle occur. So, Jacques, thank you so much for talking to me about this today. I think this is a great topic. It's one that I haven't talked about myself in way too long. And I think some of your answers and some of the thoughts here have been just absolutely fascinating. To our audience, thanks so much for joining me on The Current today. If you have questions about what you're doing with passives, if you just want to bounce some ideas around or maybe get some thoughts about the passive selection you're going to be making on your next design, we would love to talk to you with our engineering team, with our marketing team, and make sure that we're bringing the right experts to you at the right time. So thanks so much for joining us on The Current today, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.